I do get a little bit choked up because I'm sort of looking at the coffin and really drilling down on the fact there's someone in there. I don't, that makes sense on an intellectual level, you know someone's in there, but actually thinking about that.
Give us a brief summary. What does happen if someone dies without family or money? What happens when it comes to you?
They will be taken by the coroner, typically, who will make some inquiries with the police. And if it becomes apparent through their inquiries that there isn't anyone, the local authority where they died will get a phone call about arranging both the funeral and not so much winding up the affairs, but just freezing them, putting them on a hold, informing people. The estate we would then pass to the government treasury if it's over £500, or if you're in Cornwall, it would go to Prince William. It used to be Prince Charles. They also get shipwrecks, any shipwrecks, his bags.
Wow, okay, I mean, it's similar in a way, I suppose. Look, but this could be done in a very sort of perfunctory, sort of clinical, book-sticking way, but you have a real desire to sort of elevate the task, right?
Well, yeah, I think if a job's worth doing, you know, and if a job's got to do with people's lives, it kind of can get quite existential. As a human dealing with other humans, you'd like to think that when you die, someone would take care of you, make sure you had the best send-off you could possibly have. It doesn't have to be grandiose, but just a few words, someone checking out who you were, what you did, what you were like, and picking some music you might actually have liked, and trying to find someone, if you don't have family, trying to find someone who knew you, a friend, a neighbour, fellow hobbyist. We have club members come along from garden clubs or railway clubs. Someone's always, you know, in your orbit.
And you are, so after the person dies, you are, I mean, this sounds a strange way of putting it perhaps, but you are the person who is closest to them, right? Because if there were closer people, you probably wouldn't be there.
Yeah, for a brief time. I mean, my celebrant puts it quite well when he does the service. He says those people who have maybe fallen away, because there's lots of different circumstances. There can be estrangement, or there can just be outliving everyone. Those people who would be here today, because they will have existed, can't be, so it falls to us to say farewell to them. And you do feel that kind of responsibility to see them off and just hold their hand for the last time, even though they don't know about it. But I think there's something about, we get that, we've done it for our families. If someone's missing that, it doesn't feel right. So to do it for them, to step in, to help out.
And you have to be like something of a detective to track down details of people's lives you might not know. You have to sort of immerse yourself in their lives. Tell us a bit about that.
A little bit. I mean, the actual technical job at its basis is a bit of a detective job, because you are given their house keys by the police and you go in and you search. And what you're looking for is basic things like will, so that you can get an idea of, well, if there are anyone next of kin. And also basic things like bills, bank statements, so you can inform those people. But while you're in there, you're obviously also going to see music collections, an electric guitar, you know, a photo album, a diary. And you want to also be looking in those address books for phone numbers and those balled up Christmas cards on the floor for someone who's written their email address at the top right hand, and just see what you can find out about the person's personality and any sort of trace element of, you know, if they'd had a pet, or someone had their pet's lead still hanging up years after they died. And knocking on the neighbours' doors, so getting a sense of their pattern and what they were like. And then also, if you put out on things like Facebook groups for the local area, you'll get things like the local chip shop shut down for the day for one guy because he was always in there. So those people, when they heard he died, wanted to come to the funeral and shut the chip shop to make that possible. So you've got to just reach out and find all these little threads through the life that they've lived that will be out there somewhere, but it's just about finding the people who knew them.
Amazing. And look at that first stage when you're in someone's house and you're looking through their stuff, you're trying to get a sense of them. What's that like for you? Is that like upsetting and moving, or can it be just sort of exhilarating when you think, wow, what a life? Or
it's different each time, I think, because last time I did one recently, I was just marvelling at this guy who'd got his car battery out of the car and a wire and the cigarette lighter and put it on the end, and he was sitting on his sofa lighting his cigarettes like that.
Amazing.
And so you've got a glimpse of like, wow, okay. But then sometimes you'll see trace elements of a sad death or a very painful, prolonged death that where someone's lain for a while, or where there's like a bin full of balled up bloody tissues, and that makes you obviously feel bad for their last moments. But then you'll see a nice picture of them with their friends, so you get these, as with life, you get these ups, these downs, these, oh, it's sad that bit, but that's funny and that's happy, and that's interesting. And I've got that album. I saw someone had the Viz Profanosaurus. I'm like, hey, good lad. But so yeah, you do get all the emotions, and also you get this feeling of, it's odd that I'm in their house and they don't know me, and to think they were here 2 weeks ago having a cup of tea, and now I'm in their drawer sort of looking.
But you must come to feel like you do know them a lot of the time, right?
Oh, of course, yeah, by the end, I mean, yeah, you've dug down so deep and you actually feel a little bit attached to them. And when you see the coffin arrive and you know they're in there, it's like meeting a Twitter friend,
Oh my
like a
gosh,
mutual.
yeah.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah.
And I do get a little bit choked up because I'm sort of looking at the coffin and really drilling down on the fact there's someone in there. I don't, that makes sense on an intellectual level, someone's in there, but actually thinking about that.
But they've gone from being a project to a dead person. What's your relationship like then with, like, if you do track down family, if you track down friends or close friends, what are the sort of the boundaries like there? Because on some levels you're closer to the deceased than they are. You are acting as their agent, in a way, and yet they obviously have a hinterland and a history that you don't. Can that be difficult?
It's a bit of a professional, personal line, yes, because obviously if you're breaking the news, which I often am, because I'll be picking up a mobile phone in a house and just dialing random numbers, and it could be like the plumber that did a job for them 3 years ago, or it could be their son that they haven't spoken to in 20 years. And I'll be breaking the news, which is a big icebreaker, I find. So I've got this professional duty to tell them and to guide them through it. But then also they'll start spilling about everything that went wrong, and we'll have this really close chat about. Someone said to me the other day, "You must think I'm awful not wanting to come," because their father had walked away from them 20 years ago and never come back. And well, not really. Just because they've died doesn't make them an angel.
Doesn't change that. Yeah.
That still stands. The only reason for you to come is to say your goodbyes for yourself, to draw a line under it if you want to, because I've seen some family members who've been estranged come to the funeral and it lift a lot of their own sort of sadnesses about the relationship, not the person, but you're grieving that relationship that never was and can't be rescued now, and things like that. It's important to put that to rest. But I said to him, if you've already put that to rest 20 years ago, then you don't have to come. There's no duty to do that, and we'll see him off for you. So it's a nice thing to be able to say, don't worry about it, he'll not be on his own. And you don't have to feel guilty, but do come if it helps you. And yeah, so you end up hearing the whole life story because you're a neutral party. They can talk to you, and then suddenly you become pulled very close to them because they've just told you their whole life story.
Are there moments? Are there times when you're the only mourner at a funeral?
Sometimes, but very rarely. The one time that happened, I had actually found a daughter, but it was at the height of COVID, and she was shielding. So I've always found someone. Everyone's got someone, if you look hard enough. But the minimum I've had is just the one person with me. And that's because circumstances. The lady's husband was still alive, but he was so suffering from vascular dementia, he couldn't even be informed. So again, when people say, oh, how sad, how tragic that there's not many people at the funeral, it's not a scorecard or a final exam. She has someone who loved her, but he unfortunately can't be there. I'm there, her carer's there. She still lived that life. She still had all those memories with him, which were so many, and we read them all out, and we relived that life. But she's not there to know it. It's not tragic. She had that moment. So
are there moments where you have to get sort of up close and personal with the deceased? Do you have to deal with bodies at all?
I don't. The only thing I will see, because what will happen is the coroner will have gone in and removed them before they make the referral. The only thing I will see is if there's any trace evidence of where the person did die. And with our cases, sometimes that will be a few months later or a few weeks later. So you will see that. And then because it's a public health duty, part of the reason I'm doing it in environmental health is the public health aspect of a person not being dealt with after they've died, but also what they leave behind in terms of their breakfast cereal on the sideboard when the day they died. And 6 months later, that's now absolutely rancid.
Yeah.
So we're going in with bin bags, and we're taking the bin out one last time. We're cleaning their fridge out. We're opening the windows to let flies out. We're cleaning the maggots up, and that kind of end of things as well. It's this sort of cleaning lady, detective, sort of Mary Poppins.
Are there people who you you find it hard to move on from afterwards. So you feel they've become sort of the idea of them has become a part of your life, and I can imagine you might even think back and think, was that someone I knew, or was that just a case I dealt with?
You take a bit of everyone with you, actually. I think of chrysanthemums every time I see them. I think of Charlie because of that, because of the gardening. And I think of Jean when I go past a certain care home, and someone else when I go past a certain pub. And all these sort of places in my district, when I drive past, I'm like, oh, Alan lived there. And bits of them, like their hobbies, I see that and it reminds me of them. And also sometimes just the way a case made you feel. Like I had an unidentified person, and where they were found, I always think of them. And the fact I never got to know them is what haunts me, you know, is I don't know who they were.
Is that rare that someone will remain unidentified?
Pretty rare for me, because I'm in a rural area where it's very still kind of 2.4 children and family units are basically intact and people are basically okay. But if you're maybe in Birmingham City Council, where they spend $1 million a year on these kind of funerals, you're going to be looking at street deaths and drug deaths and homelessness and people who aren't claimed. I mean, I was speaking to someone recently who does these in LA, and if you're unclaimed, they cremate you and then they put out a call for your name. You know, it's just put out. And if no one comes to you in a year, all of those ashes for that year go in a giant mass grave. So we try and do better than that here, I think. But if you can't be found, you can't be found. It's really sad, but...
Has it doing the job, has it changed your perspective on death? I was going to say on death, maybe on life. I'm not sure on death and loss and how we should relate to the people around us and so on.
I mean, death and life. It's quite apt that you mix those two up then, because they are the same thing. You can't have one without the other. And I think you live better if you think about death, because you know you're on the clock and you know you can't waste time or be petty or sleep on that argument or hold that thought too long, because you just don't have time. Life literally is too short. It doesn't mean you have to be like I said, those families that have fallen apart, that's legit. You can fall apart with people, but you have to live your best life and do what you can.